first of all, if this fulfills Bob's quota, I'm all for it.
I didn't really mean to open that.
I think Trey has a good point, and what I would suggest maybe the right place that we look at is it would be a very good introduction to our strategic plan to write this kind of narrative to say, what's the fundamental set of axioms on which our strategic plan is built. So I think that would be one alternative to capture this, but put it together with actually a strategy document that says, how do we plan on delivering it?
Good. So it sounds like, and I just want to get a sense so staff know what they're doing, that
Just redraw it absent this one.
yeah, we will do the amendment absent this element
We already.
when we move the motion forward.
No, we need to make a motion. Right, we'll do that.
Okay, so we'll get that ready. All right.
Should I go home now?
You might have heard from Bob. No, we still need you, Bob.
No,
We
Bob.
still
We
need
have
you.
to vote it, Bob.
We'll give you one more.
Okay, so the retreat date is 12. So, recommendation of the executive committee is to move the retreat date to July. That would give us 3 days in July, and then in September, we have our normal 2-day meeting. That's motion number 12. Motion number 13, correct, question? Was that
Yeah, is there
you?
any questions or about moving the retreat date?
There isn't specifically, but does this also mean we're changing the September dates and is that for a later meeting?
Say again.
Oh,
I thought September was set up for 3 days, so would we also be changing the September dates at this time?
I don't know that we have to.
We don't have to do it right now.
If we do, I'll.
Yes.
Dan?
I don't know if there's anything absolutely, sacred about those days. I mean, I understand why we're moving, but if we could, I would like to consider when we do 3 days that we take Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, being one of the few people that has to take vacation off a job and adding travel and everything. If you move it to Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, end up potentially with travel time on top of that. So if we could look at a Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday as opposed to the Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, it would be appreciated.
I know we're not voting, but I second that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not this year.
I mean, not this year, but in the future.
Can I get just a quick litmus test on that? So, is everybody good with that?
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got,
Would like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, yeah.
yeah, Denise was just saying she sent out a survey and got like more on one side than the other.
8, 9, 10?
No, just as a
general.
standard operating
Oh,
procedure,
three.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, is that something that people prefer when we have a 3-day meeting? See what I'm saying?
Oh, I see, in the future.
Right.
I mean, I guess it's a sentence. Do people
Yeah,
prefer that in general?
I have
Yeah.
a general sense here that those of us who are not working ought to defer to the working people to have that conversation, because I think we can match up a little bit better.
So what are these?
So they're Wednesday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
But we're locked into that.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think it was because people looked at their schedules and
Right,
that
and
it
it's
just was
also a
what.
hotel issue, by the way.
Yes, that's right, it was a hotel
We had a
issue.
hard time getting any hotels.
Trey,
We only have one 3-day meeting in the whole year every year, right?
exactly,
Yes.
Okay,
yeah,
so we're really talking about one meeting
Yes.
yeah,
potential.
great.
Okay. Okay, so that takes us through 12. 13 is a date change associated with the special meeting for setting the graduation threshold for SBAC. That'll be an interesting meeting. And that is a function of, that's merely because they're gonna get the data sooner, correct?
I believe OSBI requested that we move the date earlier. They'll have the data available earlier, and they felt if they were able to, if the board were able to approve the threshold cut score earlier, it would give districts more time
Cindy?
Is this also subject to going away if the legislature passes 2214?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Peter?
I meant to ask this yesterday, and I'm sorry. I've been getting some questions about whether the students who are choosing not to take the test, whether that will affect the ability of OSPI to accurately to project these scores. So I'm not expecting an answer to that today, but I'd like to have some answers. I'd like to, if there is a problem, I'd like to find out about it before August 5th. So I don't know if you have information about that. We may not know until the testing period ends. But it's an issue that's out there and needs to be addressed one way or the other.
Holly?
This is a question I asked Ben yesterday, but I think just for information purposes, it would also be really interesting to know how that cut score, the cut score affects students who have the accommodation on their IEP to pass at basic.
Oh, I got
Do you have an answer for that?
Yeah.
Okay, oh, cool. I was just-
We got an email late last night.
Okay, so there must be a methodology for figuring that out. So, while you're looking at that, should I explain what I'm talking about? Yeah. So, students that have goal areas tied to some particular skill that's required on a test. So, for example, if they have a goal area in writing or a qualifying condition like a specific learning disability where their qualifying condition affects their ability to write, they are allowed an IEP modification to meet standard at basic or level 2. But because we're anticipating that meeting standard is going to be by definition at level 1, right? So all of these students' IEPs say meeting standard at basic. So now what becomes basic for the purpose of that modification of their IEP?
So,
Yeah, that's helpful.
and I don't, this is not the sort of email that you would just like read out loud, but the essence of it is essentially what we thought it was. So, for federal accountability, the L2 is the 2. Under SBAC, it
Right,
would be
yep.
level 2.
Yep.
So that would be true if 2214 passes in current form, for
Right,
example.
right.
If it does not, then we would, if we have, it would be an even lower score, likely a level 1 score, and we can talk about it next week if you'd like.
That's not an answer.
Send Robin, so,
So much for that.
but the point is that we would have to set that.
So we would set a score for the students who have accommodations
Yeah,
as part
and
of
I
their special ed.
believe under the, yeah.
Let me ask a question. So let me think back to the past.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't here when that happened.
Yeah.
So on the HISP, did the state board approve what was level 4, what was 3, what was 2, what was 1? Did we approve all
Yes.
4 levels?
Yes, by law.
So this is a little bit of an interesting question then, right? Because in WAC it just says we will approve 1 graduation cut score. But now there's another cut score that has to be, so it is a
And I think
good
it's
question.
supposed to be commensurate, you know?
So you would just look at what would be if that 1 is what used to be level 3, you would just
Yeah,
divide it.
I think it's kind of a math problem, that's
Okay,
my
well
sense.
anyway, I'm just curious
Yeah.
what that methodology is and how we.
No, I'm
think
glad
about
you
that.
asked, because that's actually the first time I thought about that, so.
Yeah.
So it's a good question, I just, I don't know yet, so.
Maybe another thing for the July meeting.
Yeah.
Actually, and that would be really good, because if we're gonna have to do something in August, then
Yeah.
to
No, it
understand.
would be at, I believe it would be at the same,
I thought August,
yeah.
but we could know about the methodology though, that, or their
That's-
thinking, that's
yes.
what I mean.
And I think what happened in the old system is that we set it originally, and then it just remained in perpetuity and was a function of new cuts that were set, right? So it was treated as a math problem rather than as a new policy. Okay,
Any other questions?
um,
Listeners?
12, 13 is good. assessment. You had a little video in your packet. Again, this is one of those deals where we thought people may not even know what we're talking about when we talk about AIM. So that's why we bring it to you early. You have a little video, and so this exhibit outlines the 4 points. The 4? It's up there on the screen. Thank you, partner. Can you scroll down? Yes. Okay, and so, Linda, can you say a couple of words about this?
Well, the board has approved processes for setting cut scores in the past. This is for the AIM assessment, which is for the most severely disabled students, a small percentage of students. It involves, teams of teachers who set achievement levels descriptors, that is what is expected at each level for the students. And then they weight those based on grade expectations, and then they go through the process that you've seen before where they have a deck of items and they create the cut score. The sorting, right. So by step 3 and 4, those would be similar to what you've seen before, but it is treated a little differently in 1 and 2 because of the different nature of the assessment.
And, OSPI asked me whether or not it was necessary to get our approval for the cut score, and under the plain reading of the statute, it is. This is a much smaller student population and a more unique process. But it does not exclude this in the statute in terms of what we have to ultimately set the cut score for, so.
Any questions? Okay, no. Do we want to move back to the, are you ready to move back to the conversation that we were having earlier about the,
Oh, yes, CTE,
yeah,
yeah.
CTE, yes.
So can you put 6552 up there? And can you first, I think Madeline's question was about the length of the waiver, Madeline, is that right? Okay. So, were you able to locate that there, Parker?
Yes.
Oh, okay. We'll just tell them what to bring up.
Okay, if you could bring up our rules on the waiver. There it comes.
Okay.
And this was to address the question that Madeline had about whether there was a waiver and how long was the waiver for, is that right, Madeline?
So the bill just specified that there would be a waiver available for any district with fewer than 2,000 students. So the state board adopted rules for that process. In our rules, we specified that the waiver would be up to 2 years.
Any questions, Holly?
Sorry.
No.
So would these waivers need to start, so the law says that districts are supposed to implement the equivalencies in the 15-16 school year. We heard from OSPI yesterday that they don't expect that to happen in the 16-17 school year. So can we assume then that we put those waivers off, or do these districts have to apply for a waiver for next year, and then they would get 1 year beyond what the districts would get?
So I have to be careful the way I answer this, okay? We are not gonna enforce, we're not going to we are not.
I got you, yeah.
First year of implementation will not be a focus of compliance efforts of the State Board of Education staff.
I do have a follow-up question.
Okay, go ahead, Holly.
So if my district were to come to you in come to us in 2016, 17, and ask
Yeah, no, it seems like a reasonable request to me, net of the 2,000 enrollment thing, I don't know, maybe we were talking about that.
Yeah.
but-
Anything related to this one specific question, because I know there was another one that Cindy, was it on this, Cindy? that you had? No, I'm sorry. Any other questions related to this, or any,
Hopefully not.
I mean, just in general about the CTE?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, Holly, actually, to your point, Cindy, Holly showed
Yeah,
me
that's okay.
the correspondence from Tim Canoe indicating that he also was under the impression. So I'm bolstering your point here that there's some,
I wasn't alone in my misunderstanding.
yeah, so for whatever it's worth, for the public record, we've never been under any other understanding about this law, and we have always communicated what we've communicated to you, but apparently that's not a, at least, and Tim would know, so, so, back to Peter's point, that he made yesterday, this is an interesting landscape because we were the
Generators
of this
legislation.
policy, but we are not the stewards of this particular law. We don't implement that law, we don't write the rules for it, and so we're gonna have to work through OSPI, and in the same way we would expect them to do the opposite if it were a rule about graduation requirements, This is a rule about CTE course equivalencies that is in a section of law outside of that which we have purview. So first thing we're gonna do is email Betty and